Hey guys, Sean here and welcome to the F1 Word. Now last week, Formula 1 published its 8-race European calendar, which will see the season start with a doubleheader in Austria and then a race in Hungary. And that start to the 2020 season got me thinking, do the first 3 races of this year give Red Bull and Max Verstappen an early championship advantage? Well, on paper you might be inclined to say yes, after all they have won the last 2 races in Austria and the team, more specifically Helmut Marko, has said that he is confident they will do so again this year. And actually if we look back to 2017, although Verstappen didn't score in that race, Daniel Ricciardo did finish on the podium. So they do have some good form at the Red Bull Ring, but when it comes to Hungary, things are a bit less clear-cut. In fact, since 2017, Verstappen has picked up just 29 points at the Hungaroring compared to Lewis Hamilton's 62. And as a team, Red Bull have racked up 49 points in Hungary since 2017, with Mercedes scoring 91. So whilst the characteristics of the track should, in theory, suit Red Bull, this notion that they have some kind of advantage in Hungary just isn't true when you dig through the numbers. And the truth is, the team have only won there once since the start of the turbo hybrid era in 2014, although it must be said in that same period of time they have notched up a total of 5 podiums to be fair, including that win in 2014 and a double podium finish in 2015. But it's not like it's a track that they dominate on. And if you're wondering about Ferrari, by the way, they've won twice in Hungary since 2014, including a 1-2 finish in 2017, and they've picked up a total of 7 podiums as well. As for their form in Austria, though, it's a little bit mixed. They haven't won at the Red Bull Ring since it rejoined the calendar, although, of course, Leclerc was very close last year. But they have grabbed 5 podiums, so it's not as if they have really terrible form there. They're just not doing anything overly spectacular. The question for this video, though, isn't so much directly about Ferrari or Mercedes. It's do Red Bull, more specifically Max Verstappen, because, let's face it, that team is built around him, do they have an early advantage based on the initial 2020 calendar? Well, yeah, if we look at just the first 3 races and if we can read anything into these numbers, which we can't because, of course, just because Verstappen has won at Austria for the last 2 seasons, it doesn't necessarily mean he will do so again in 2020. However, for what it's worth and to give us a rough idea of what could happen, and that's the key word in this video, could, if we take last year's results and apply them to both races at Austria this year and the 1 race in Hungary, the table could look something like this after those first 3 races. Max Verstappen would top the table on 71 points, 23 points clear of Charles Leclerc in second on 48. Lewis Hamilton would only be third on 45 points and a race win and a fastest lap away from the top of the table. Sebastian Vettel would be fourth on 39 points, Bottas would have 34 points in fifth, and Alexander Albon would be 51 points off the top on 20 points in sixth. Now, obviously, it's tough to give a fair comparison on Albon's points because he spent the first half of last year in a Toro Rosso and didn't move to Red Bull until Spa. So what I've done there is taken Gasly's results for Austria and Hungary and given them to Albon. So that total for Alex should really be looked at as the tally for the second Red Bull driver rather than him specifically. But anyway, what about averages? Because I know some of you love a good average, and you might even argue that it's a fairer way to go over this. So here are the average points per race for the top 6 drivers across those first 3 races, and then their total points if we applied them to those 3 races and the opening 8 races of 2020 as well. Now, it's kind of pointless looking at the middle column because we've already gone over this in the table we've just looked at. There's a 0.2 and a 0.1 difference in Verstappen and Bottas' scores, but that's it. But across those first 3 races, Verstappen has an average of 23.6 points, which would translate into 188.8 points across those opening 8 European races. Now, I'm not saying for 1 second that Verstappen is going to be scoring nearly 24 points a race, but that's the maths. That's what it all says there on averages. Leclerc, 16 points for him, 128 across 8 races. Lewis Hamilton gets a 15-point average. Vettel gets a 13-point average, 120 and 104 points for them respectively. Bottas' points per race average is 11.3 and Albon gets 6.6. And that's 90.4 points for Bottas and 52.8 points for Albon across those opening 8 races. I love maths. As well as those tables, I did decide to, I suppose, handicap the second race in Austria by awarding half points to see if it made any difference. And it made a little bit of a difference, but nothing overly dramatic. Max Verstappen would still be top of the table, 58 points though, rather than 71, with Lewis Hamilton moving into second place on 40 points, 1 point clear of Leclerc in third, with Vettel fourth on 33, Bottas fifth on 26.5, and then Alexander Albon sixth on 17 points. But again, Albon's tally is based on Gasly's results. But yeah, half points for race 2 doesn't really make a huge difference. It would be closer, as you can see there, 41 points between the top 6 rather than 51, but Verstappen would still top the championship by the time Formula 1 arrived in Silverstone. There you go then, although these numbers really mean absolutely nothing because, as I've already said, just because something happened last year, it doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. But it does give us a rough idea about how things might go if the car performance for the top 3 teams is similar to how it was in 2019 at the first 2 tracks of this season. However, if those tables I've shared turn out to be anywhere near reality, number one, I'll be absolutely stunned. And number two, they wouldn't stay like that for long, because as soon as you throw in the results from Silverstone last year, which will be doubled of course as we've got 2 races there this year, things change dramatically. So after that 70th anniversary Grand Prix, the second race at Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton would top the table on 97 points, with Max Verstappen dropping to second on 91 and Charles Leclerc third on 78. And as you can see there, 19 points separating the top 3 and only 27 separating the top 4 as well, with Bottas on 70 points in 4th place. And then it's actually Alexander Albon in 5th on 44 points, 53 off the top. And then it's Sebastian Vettel on just 39 points in 6th place. And we may as well, seeing as we've come this far, if we apply all of last year's results to the opening 8 races of 2020, the Drivers' Championship table would look like this after the Italian Grand Prix. Hamilton top, 157 points. Leclerc in 2nd place on 138, 19 points off the top. Valtteri Bottas would move up to 3rd place on 121 points, and Verstappen falls to 4th on 110. But I would argue that with potentially another 8 races to go, that is still a position he can recover from. It's only a couple of race wins and a couple of retirements for, let's say, Hamilton, for example. But it is a massive difference compared to where he was at the start of this video, if you like. And then as you can see there, the final 2 in the table, Albon will be 5th on 70 points and Vettel 6th on 64 points, 93 away from Lewis Hamilton. Now, for me, these last 2 tables highlight a couple of things. Firstly, we could be set for a very tight and exciting championship battle. The calendar really does seem to be set up nicely, with tracks that on paper favour one team, followed by tracks that favour another. It could leave us with a thrilling fight during the flyaways if and when they happen. But also look how much one bad weekend, a run of solid consistency or a winning streak can change things. Sebastian Vettel, what in 2020 would be classed as a double DNF at Silverstone, falls all the way down to 6th place, whereas Lewis Hamilton with 2 wins and 2 fastest laps at those races moves all the way to the top of the table. And then you've got consistency from the likes of Leclerc and Bottas, which keeps them right in the running. But ultimately, what this has shown me is that we can't really compare results season on season. There are just too many variables, especially this year. For example, going back to the British Grand Prix last year, is Vettel going to plough into the back of Verstappen every year at Silverstone? Probably not. You look back to Verstappen's engine penalty in Monza last year. We've only got 7 races preceding that race this year as opposed to 13 last year, which means in theory it's less likely Verstappen's going to have to take a power unit change in Monza, which means his starting position in race isn't going to be instantly compromised. And what about Albon as well? He's a big variable in all of this. I've given him Gasly's points for some of the races last year, but he might do a hell of a lot better than Pierre did, and that might result in him taking points off others, which could in turn help Verstappen in the championship. Then again, flip side, he might do worse than Gasly did, who knows, and that's kind of the point. These comparisons can only give us a very rough but pretty unreliable guide as to how things might go based on previous form. But if nothing else, it has satisfied my curiosity, and I hope it's done the same for some of you guys too. What I would say in summary, I guess, is based on what I've gone through in this video and the form of the teams over the last few seasons, it does feel as though Verstappen and Red Bull have got a great opportunity to steal a march on their opponents at those first 3 races. And if they can find form at tracks where they've not struggled but dipped in the past, I suppose, limit the damage at Mercedes-dominated tracks like Spain, they really do look like they could be a serious threat this year. We might even be looking at a situation where Mercedes are needing to play catch-up early on in the season, and that's not something we've seen very often since 2014. Yeah, okay, Ferrari had some good starts to the season in 2017 and 2018, for example, but it's not often we see Mercedes having to chase other teams down in the championship. And you know, actually, thinking about it, that in itself could have a big impact on the championship fight. If, let's say for argument's sake, Hamilton has to hunt down Verstappen in the championship, is he going to be forced to take more risks? I'd probably say yes. If he is, that could lead to contact, which might compromise a race. He may have to push his car harder than he'd like to, which could have an impact on reliability. And then from Verstappen's point of view, what risks would he be willing to take if he has something to defend? He's not been in that position with the championship before. How aggressive is he going to be willing to be? Like I say, we've never, when it comes to the championship, seen Verstappen in a position where he's got something to lose. And you know what, just in all honesty, thinking about it all, and this is absolutely nothing against Lewis or Mercedes, but just the idea of that happening makes me almost want Red Bull to get onto a flyer this year. The potential consequences, the what-ifs, the big question marks around it all gets me seriously excited. We could be in for an absolute belter this year. And that's without even mentioning the likes of Ferrari. All of those tables earlier in the video have Charles Leclerc as a contender, so you just cannot write him off. With 2020 set to be a much shorter season than we've been used to over recent years, every single point is going to matter, and so consistency could be more important this year than it has been in any year recently. which I suppose in turn throws Bottas into the mix as well. We know how consistent he can be. And we also have a 4-time world champion in Sebastian Vettel, who's got a point to prove this year and will want to leave Ferrari on a high. And don't forget as well, there are other variables to consider this year, like for example the impact of holding the Spanish Grand Prix in the middle of the summer. We know Mercedes have had cooling issues in the past. Could that result in them struggling at a track they usually dominate at and open the door for Red Bull or Ferrari? And also, how rusty are drivers going to be? Lewis Hamilton has said he expects them to be. So could we see multiple frontrunners falling out of that first Grand Prix of the year? Like I say, just so many potential variables and what-ifs that it makes it impossible to predict, and that's kind of perfect. I don't want to know what's going to happen in Formula 1. If you would like a cheeky little prediction before I go though, I'm going to say that Max Verstappen will arrive at Silverstone as the championship leader. It won't be a comfortable lead by any stretch of the imagination, but that might just set us up for a potentially great season and an awesome title fight, hopefully at least. Bring it on, I am more than ready for this season. That is it for this video though. You can as ever let me know your thoughts down in the comments section, and do you think Red Bull will be topping the table by the time Formula 1 reaches Silverstone? Now, I will be back soon with more content as ever, and I'll be starting my pre-season content soon too, so if you're new to the channel and you want to hear my random ramblings about Formula 1 this season, then make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads. In the meantime though, don't forget you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, and hopefully I will catch you again in the next one. Bye bye.